Hmm. Hello, subscribers, patrons, family, fans, followers, supporters, and generally anybody who happens to stumble across my videos. This is Johnston Blackhorse. It's another random live stream in which I will be working on my animation, and it's getting pretty far along. I'm hoping I'll be able to finish the keyframes and animation for like the epic part of this animation, like the really meaty part, which I'm just hoping to wow everybody with. And again, like I'm hoping this animation will garner more interest. Excuse me, uh, interest and support to my YouTube and my Patreon. And this is one of the first big endeavors that I've been working on is just to have like this first showcase piece to release on my YouTube, and I'm just really hoping that it just kind of starts spreading the word around or whatever, and then I can start. Well, I'll start working on like other like little sexy loop animations, just nothing too extreme or pornographic. Just something that harkens back to the genre that I'm still fighting to get back into, and still going about the whole like legal process of that. Which brings me to my next point is that later today I'm having to go to a court appointed polygraph, and I just want to express my feelings on that situation. Is just that I feel like it's unconstitutional, going against the Fifth Amendment and the Eighth Amendment, and also just the whole fact that all these restrictions and friggin' guidelines that I have to live by are just very unconstitutional in and of themselves. And I know the courts are going to argue that I agreed to all these things, all these terms and whatever by signing away, like the signing that piece of paper. But I feel that piece of paper I signed agreeing to all these unconstitutional violations against me, like I feel that signing that paper just really isn't legally binding because I signed that paper under duress. Like I come out and you're like more or less told that you have to sign this piece of paper agreeing to all these restrictions, otherwise they'll just continue to hold you in prison. And like having to live through prison for like a year, and then afterward a year and a half, and then afterwards getting thrown back into prison for 6 more months for some stupid arbitrary reason. That reason being that they said I violated for being in possession of pornography, but it was pornography that I myself drew. And let me remind everyone that I was granted to draw pornography for financial purposes, but they willfully like misconstrued all that to just find me in violation and then just threw me in prison for another 6 months. 6 months for drawing pornography, and that I think is just bullshit. So going along with the whole like signing the terms of agreement for release, I feel is just pretty unlawful because you're being forced to sign a piece of paper under duress. It's like well, I was wanting to get out of that whole prison environment, and yeah, there are a lot of things on that piece of paper that I don't agree with, but what am I going to do? Just sit in prison until they friggin' decide to let me go? Just, I don't know. It's just, I just don't feel like it's legally binding because of that fact. Like when you're trying to get out of that environment, a prison environment, you're willing to sign any piece of paper they shove in front of you just to get that taste of freedom. But in many ways, just having this pseudo freedom that they're allowing me to have, and willing to throw me back in prison for any arbitrary reason, which they've already shown before, like 6 months ago, over 6 months ago. It's just very stressful, and I can see why many offenders, they either reoffend just to go back to prison because they can't either make a living or just can't live under this overly strict umbrella of the pseudo freedom. So just fucking go back to prison where you don't have to worry about it, or they opt to kill themselves. And one of my previous the previous PO that I had, like, he did have like a probationee kill himself because his restrictions and regulations are just so overly strict that he just couldn't live with it anymore. And I understand where that guy's coming from, because this pseudo freedom and being forced to live as a secondary class citizen is just horrendous. It's monstrous. And the courts justify it saying like, oh, well, you signed that piece of paper. But again, like, we signed that piece of paper under duress. And that being the case, I don't believe that that signature is legally binding, because it's just ridiculous. And for the just minimal or mere action of just merely downloading child pornography, I don't feel is justified in just throwing someone in prison regardless, like for any amount of time, because there is no actual immediate victim in that case. And I'm going to keep stressing that, and I know people are going to keep arguing that I'm minimizing it, and like, I'm willing to agree that I'm minimizing it, but that's only because the law is just overblown the situation to merely justify keeping their prisons full. And I believe like the whole signing of these like overbearing restrictions is just a mere excuse to just like later on arbitrarily throw these people back in prison. And I'm doing what I can to work through it, but I feel like I shouldn't have to do all of this bullshit, especially the whole polygraph thing I have to do later today. And I just want to say like why I feel that that's unconstitutional, because a polygraph test is like fundamentally like a violation of the Fifth Amendment, and the Fifth Amendment being like um, you can't be forced or compelled to bear witness against yourself. And the whole polygraph test thing is a violation of that, because it essentially that's what they're doing. And coinciding with that, it's like you can't be compelled to bear false witness against yourself, because in many cases, polygraph tests are very unreliable, and a mere misreading or what's the term? Um, uh, Inconclusive results could result in more punishment. And I don't even really believe that's proper. And since, like, in many cases before, like, polygraph tests have been proved to be either inconclusive or very untrustworthy, they can't even be used in a court of law. So, um, why am I being forced to partake in a polygraph test if they're not even seen as legal or well inadmissible in court? And I've looked into it, and some of the only arguments that I can see that they still utilize polygraph tests specifically for sex offenders is because it inspires them to be truthful, and that's just a very arbitrary or loose reasoning to just keep that unconstitutional like mechanism or tool in action. I mean, it's just wrong. So like, if I go to this polygraph test and heaven forbid that there's like a misreading or like inconclusive results, like I would suffer like more punishment, or like an extension of punishment, or something of that nature. And it's just improper, it's incorrect, and also like it violates the Eighth Amendment for being cruel and unusual. Like, not only is it cruel, like having to force someone to bear witness against themselves or bear false witness against themselves, it's also unusual in the fact that it's this data isn't admissible in court in any other case except sex offenders, and it's just like ridiculous of how that's allowed to continue. And the only reasoning that I've like read up on is because it inspires truthfulness. But in any case, I'm hoping to just stay calm and just pass this thing. And it's the having to face the potential negative effects of possible. I said the word and I just can't remember it again. Possible. Oh, inconclusive results would result in me like either having more restrictions placed on me or just have my restrictions like extended, and it just sucks. And again, like this on top of like the whole like freedom of speech being threatened in European Union with this Article 13 that I've just heard about. And I just see everything as a systematic endeavor by world governments to turn um, the leading countries into an authoritarian state. And that is far from what America was supposed to be. That's far from like the founding fathers like intent of what this America or what this country was supposed to stand for and what it was supposed to represent. Because let's face it, like people in America are being thrown into prison for very arbitrary reasons, and they're being thrown back into prison for even more arbitrary reasons. Case in point, like me myself, like getting thrown back in prison for just drawing pornography. And I do feel like when I was in prison for that very minuscule violation, if it could be seen as such, was I felt like a political prisoner, just expressing my freedom of speech to just draw pornography because I like porn, and like I wanted to share it with like-minded individuals who enjoyed the pornography that I drew. But that freedom of speech, that freedom of expression, for me is outlawed, and they threw me back in prison for expressing those thoughts or those feelings in my drawings. And it's clearly a thought crime, and that's what it is in essence. It can't be misconstrued any other way. To like re-imprison someone over a matter of drawings, I mean, what the fuck is this country coming to? What the fuck are the laws coming to? And I keep saying it time and time again, like America is so inundated with laws that people in America, society as a whole, you're either one of two things. Like you're either a convicted felon or a potential felon, and that's it. There's like really no in between. So um, I think the reason for that is that we as Americans don't hold our Constitution and Bill of Rights sacred, and as long as we don't do that, like the elected officials and people working in government who are making all these laws are going to continue wiping their ass with the Bill of Rights. They're going to continue stepping all over our constitutional rights and just misinterpreting or misconstruing like the meaning and everything to their whim, just so they can have the final say so in what it is. But we need to backtrack and just pull back a whole lot of these laws and bring it back to basics, what it was actually meant for, and not what it can be misconstrued as. And that's the thing. And so I think we as Americans need to like wake up and value our Bill of Rights and our constitutional liberties and rights, and just hold them to the highest standards and hold them sacred, and severely punish those individuals who transgress against the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. And I'm willing to just say it that any elected official or federal employee of the government who is found guilty of transgressing against the Constitution or Bill of Rights should suffer capital punishment, because we don't tolerate foreign powers violating our rights or constitutional liberties. So why do we tolerate it from our elected officials? And that's it in a nutshell. Like, to hold these people responsible and accountable for their constitutional trespasses or their transgressions against the Bill of Rights and the Constitution can't be tolerated. And that's what I believe, and that's something that I'm hoping to strive for in the near future. So anyway, I'm gonna get to animating. I've been ranting about this a little bit, and I just felt like I needed to get that off my chest. But if you take a step back and look at what America is becoming, you'll see that for the past several decades, all these overbearing laws and strict policies are just a systematic endeavor to bring us to an authoritarian or totalitarian state. And that's the truth. I mean, you take a step back and you look at everything for what it is. Like, they state that, like, oh, it's for everyone's safety, it's for the sake of America's youth, or like to keep America pure, this and that. But those are all just like flimsy, like thinly veiled bullshit reasons to just keep their prisons full. And our prison for profit system is just way out of control, and it needs to be dismantled and rebuilt from the ground up. Because you don't throw people in prison over a matter of drawings. I mean, come on, let's be real. It's like, if you're going to use prison, there has to be like an actual immediate victim or actual like real damage, not this whole supposition of throwing people in prison for their potential to cause harm. And that's where the law is nowadays. They're convicting people just based on potential. Case in point, like drug offenders, like someone gets pulled over and they're found to have like a few ounces of cocaine on them or something, but if they're like viewed as a distributor, they're not processed or charged with the amount of narcotics or drugs. They're not processed or charged with the actual amount of drugs that is found on them. They're charged with the potential amount that they could have sold or might have already distributed. So instead of charging for someone for the actual amount, they're charged for like, well, if he's been out, if this guy's been at this for like X amount of months or years, then he must have sold like kilos of this stuff or distributed kilos of this stuff, and they charge him based on that, like a mere conjecture or supposition of what he might be guilty of or what his potential for distribution is, instead of his actual offense, his or her actual offense. And that's just bullshit. And I think right now we're currently in a transition process, because the war on drugs, like, everyone knows it's a bullshit policy. It's a failing endeavor to declare like war on drugs, because you're essentially just declaring a war on addiction or a war on illness, and that that dish don't hold water. And I've had this theory before, and like I've seen it getting employed systematically. Like the whole war on drugs is shifting toward the war on sex or the war on deviance. And I feel that that's why I was thrown back in prison over a mat of drawings that the courts didn't agree with. And it sucks that that this is allowed to happen, because no one wants to talk about it, no one wants to discuss it, because they feel like it's taboo or uncomfortable, and that somehow like it'll right itself, but it's not. It's like we gotta become enraged, and we gotta become empowered to call out this bullshit for what it is, and stop these overbearing and frivolous policies that just enslaves American citizens over very arbitrary reasons, over supposition, and over like the mere perceived potential that like individual could be dangerous, when like that could be said of anybody. So instead of charging someone for their potential to cause harm, like people should actually be charged for what they're actually guilty of. And when you boil it down, the actuality of a whole lot of cases is just very minuscule. And it's something that I want to strive to change. And I've talked to like the few friends I've had. I've talked to family members about it, and they agree with me for the most part. There are some that believe that my whole like treating federal transgressors against the Constitution as a capital offense, like subjecting them to capital punishment, is a little extreme or hasty. But like, hey, come on, like these people are responsible for violating the rights of hundreds, if not thousands, perhaps even millions of American citizens over their friggin' arbitrary bullshit. And like a lot of these families have been damaged beyond repair for the sake of their sensibilities, you know, like for the sake of sensibility in and of itself. And you can't hold people to that high a standard. So elected officials or federal policing workers who work for the government, if they're found to be a transgressor against the Bill of Rights or the Constitution, it should be treated as a capital offense. Because again, if we don't hold our rights and liberties sacred, if we don't hold our Constitution and Bill of Rights sacred in this country, they're just going to keep walking all over us. And after like a bit of talking and just like full on telling like some of my family members who were thinking like it was a little extreme, is like, hey, come on, like telling my sisters like that my sister was threatened with legal action just for being in proximity of my artwork. And I believe that that is just way too much. I mean, that in and of itself is a threat to, or like a transgression against the Constitution and like the Bill of Rights and whatever, because to throw someone in prison, one of my family members, for just being around me while I'm producing fictional artwork, is just heinous. And it's something that I can't stand for. And if she were to face legal action, that would just be too much. So to put her through that strife and to put my family through that strife, you know, like for, again, like these elected officials and policing authorities, just for the sake of like their sensibility, is just bullshit. So I believe that any transgressor against the Constitution and Bill of Rights who is an elected official or government employee or policing authority, it should be treated as a capital offense. And they should be handled as such. So after explaining it in that sense, you know, like they're willing to destroy your lives over just very arbitrary or frivolous reasons, or threaten you with legal action for very trivial or arbitrary reasons, they should be held accountable for their transgression against the Constitution. Because we just shouldn't allow that bullshit at all. So, you know, like, don't threaten my family. Jesus. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Just threatening my family just for being in my proximity when I created like some of this fictional artwork that, oh no, is just so taboo, and like the only victim there are like people's sensibilities. I mean, it's like we're not even America anymore, and yet we still sing America's praises all the time whenever we sing the national anthem. I mean, like, land of the free and home of the brave. Like, how can we call ourselves land of the free when America imprisons more people per capita than any other country, and pretty much the whole world combined? And we call ourselves, you know, the home of the brave, but yet we have so many laws based on fear. Like I said earlier, is like people are being charged for their potential alone, the potential to cause harm, or like the intent. Oh, he had intent. Like, there may have very well been no intent at all, but it's like a lot of people are like getting misconstrued. Like, their actions are being misconstrued in order to just justify a prison sentence. And like I've been saying, it's like all in the process of keeping their prison for profit system running. And these prisons are nothing more than human piggy banks. And it's something that needs to end. But yeah, I'm just going on this rant because I have to go to unconstitutional polygraph test. Which I agreed to do under duress, and that's something that I want on record. I might even say that as I'm doing the polygraph test, is like, I only agreed to do this under duress for fear of imprisonment or further imprisonment, and I feel like it's a violation of the Fifth Amendment to bear like witness against oneself, or to bear false witness against oneself, because polygraph tests have been proven to be unreliable and therefore aren't admissible in a court of law. It's also cruel and unusual, because not only are you subjugating me to like a cruel practice with the whole mental strain or stress that may come from a possible false reading or a inconclusive reading. It's also unusual that, seeing as how it's not admissible in a court of law, why is it being utilized in a legal, I guess, format or a legal fashion? I mean, for talk shows, like, it could be like it's a novelty. It's more of a novelty than it is like an actual, like a truth detecting device. So I guess in that sense, it's like unusual because in all actuality, like it's should be seen more of a like a novelty item in a sense, because the whole aspect of calling a polygraph test a lie detector isn't factual in the least. And because of that, that's why they're no longer admissible in a court of law. So to judge my actions or adjust my probation based on a novelty a novelty device is just too overbearing, and just risks my liberties and freedoms, and then therefore is just also unconstitutional in and of itself. So if you elect me president, I'll pull back a lot of these laws, root out all transgressors and violators against the Constitution and Bill of Rights, hold them accountable for their un-American acts, and have them all face capital punishment, just so we as Americans don't have to deal with this bull crap ever again. Anyway, I think I'm gonna go step out and get some lunch. But right now, I'll just do like a little preview of what I've got accomplished in this little scene.
Soon, I will rise in the ranks of great animators and gain the title of Overlord and Commander of this reality. With my vast animation prowess and storytelling capabilities, I will rise in my pursuit to overthrow the Disney Empire. Yes, kneel before your new animations god and rejoice. Oh, quick, with.
And that's about it so far. But yeah, it's getting pretty epic. It's getting pretty out of control, and that's what I want, is just to like freaking have like a lot of eye-popping eye candy for everyone to just latch onto and subscribe to my channel and support my Patreon, and just see more like cool or wacky animations such as this. But it's probably going to be a while before I do something like this huge again, because I feel like I need to get better equipment, not only like bigger resolution monitor, but maybe a better like tablet, such as something like a Wacom Cintiq or similar. So I'm hoping after I get all this support and funding, I'll be able to afford those things shortly after the release of this video. But after I release this video, I'm gonna go back to doing like really sexy like loop animations, where you have like characters just scantily clad and just dancing around being cute, and nothing pornographic just yet. I'm gonna look into that. Gonna try to win that appeal, and if I don't win that appeal, I guess I'm just gonna have to push that issue and just make it more public than it was the last time. And I'll do that by just spreading the word out through all my social media sites and just making a big old stink about it, just fucking calling foul against my my oppressors. So yeah, like I think that would be like just kind of doing this a step-by-step thing, but ultimately I want to have all elected officials or policing federal authorities just found guilty of their transgressions, or just found guilty as transgressors and oppressors, and to just have them bear that capital punishment. And I'll get into that much later. I'm going to animate like a few series on that issue, on that topic. But yeah, I think that's the only way to just bring America back to being America. Because if you take a step now, take a few steps back and look at America as it is now, you'll see it's like a very like empty, or it's a shell of what it's supposed to be. Like it's a hollow representation of what America was founded on, what it's supposed to stand for. And just look at the prison system. Look at all the frivolous laws that we have in place, and just see it for what it is. And all it is that for the past several decades, we've been stepping toward an authoritarian or totalitarian system, which is just unconstitutional in and of itself. And, like, again, we as Americans have to hold the Constitution and the Bill of Rights sacred, and the transgressors and oppressors have to be held fully accountable and serve that capital punishment. Because if we don't hold these documents sacred, if we don't hold our rights and liberties sacred, they're just going to keep making these frivolous laws. They're just going to keep violating our Bill of Rights and stepping all over the Constitution. So we as the American citizens have to stand up and just finally, just shout no at the top of our lungs. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed the little animation that I got done so far. Now I'm going to keep working on this throughout the day, and probably go get some lunch right now. So if you want to support more videos like this, or more art content from me, or more animations, then feel free to stop by my Patreon website. I have a Patreon page. Check it out. There's like a lot of free content there, and if you like what you see, then go ahead and think about becoming a patron. And when you do become a patron, you'll have access to patron-only content, which comes in the form of full resolution scans of some of the artwork that I have there, and as well as the raw like working files that I utilize to make some of the artwork and animations that I do, such as like Photoshop files, After Effects files, and Flash files. And if Patreon's not your thing and you still want to contribute, I do have a GoFundMe account. Those links will be in the description below. And if you want to check up on and see my life story, or like see like a whole lot of more artwork from me, there are low resolution versions of some of the artwork I have available on Patreon at my autobiographical blog, Johnston Blackhorse, the one and only .blogspot.com. That link is also in the description below. And I'm also a member of DeviantArt, Fur Affinity, and Ink Money. And so if you're a member of any of those websites, feel free to watch me, follow me, subscribe to me. And if you want, you can send me a comment, you can send me a message or a note, just tell me what's up. Or if you want to get to know me and just, I guess, ask whatever questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. So, with all that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell if you want to. And like always, I'll check you all later. Thanks for watching. Bye.